Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Coffee with Our Researchers. I'm Galit Solomon. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications with Canadian Associates of Ben-Gurion University. We're also known as CABGU. And Coffee with Our Researchers is a monthly 30-minute segment in which one of our staff members sits down with BGU researchers for a casual conversation over coffee or tea to learn about a hot topic of interest coming out of the university. And now I'd like to introduce Simon Ben-Simon, our Executive Director for Montreal and Ottawa, to introduce today's topic. Simon, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Galit, and hello, everyone. And good morning, good afternoon, Amir. Nice to see you, even though it's virtual. We did meet in Montreal a few years ago, and I hope to see you back here in Canada in the near future. So let me first of all introduce you a little bit, and then we'll get on to some questions in our discussion for this morning on the very interesting and vast topics of robotics. And we all hear about robots and the impact of robotics on our lives and our economy, but we'll get a better idea through this conversation with Professor Amir Shapiro. So Amir, you have a Bachelor's of Science, your Master's and your PhD from the Technion, the Israel Institute of Technology. So before you became a BGU man, you were a Technion man, I see. And you are a specialist in robotics, and you are the director of the robotics lab at BGU. So before we go on to exactly what you do in the lab, how would you define robotics in general terms for our viewers and our people listening to this interview?
Hi, first, thank you for inviting me, and it's a great pleasure and honor to be here, and hopefully to be not virtual, but in real life in the near future. Mm-hmm. So robots are defined as machines that are reprogrammables, so you can program them to do different tasks, and also they are defined as machines that can sense the environment, also think, make decisions, and act. Actually make something happen and do something physically. This is the common definition of robots, that they can do sensing, thinking, and acting.
So before we go into some detail, how did you come about? I remember that when my son was 6-7 years old, we took him to Sunday activity doing robotics. Were you one of those kids? How did you come about to be interested in robotics?
Actually, yes, but when I was 6-7 years old, there were no computers, not at home.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes, our first calculator. My father bought it when I was 7, and also my father is also in mechanical engineering, so I'm in the field from the family, from young age. And then we got a computer at home, personal computer, when I was at I think 5th grade, something like that. It was at the beginning of the 80s, 1980s. And then I started programming. And when I wanted to study at the university, at the Technion back then, I wasn't sure if I want to do computer science or mechanical engineering. Mechanical engineering, I knew exactly what it is from home, but computer science, I wasn't sure about it. I liked to program, but I wasn't so sure. So I decided eventually to go to mechanical engineering, but also I took many courses from computer science. And that led me to robotics, to be able to program the robot to design the robot and then to program the robot to do different tasks. And that's how I ended up in robotics. And I like to see things moving, not only as pixels on the screen, but also in physical environment.
So please get into your lab, the robotics lab at BGU. And I also see that you are not the only one at Ben-Gurion University involved in robotics in many different ways. I'm on my other screen here. I'm on the webpage of the ABC Robotics Initiative, which is agricultural, biological, and cognitive robotics, which is a vast, and a number of your colleagues as well as yourself are involved in that initiative. So please tell us about your particular lab, the work that you're involved with, and the ABC initiative.
So yes, there is a lot of activities in robotics at BGU. There are many labs, many researchers in different areas. In my lab, what we do, we concentrate on a system. So we do everything from the mechanical part of the robot through the electronics, and finally in the programming and algorithm design of the robots. So we are kind of a system engineers that do the whole system. And therefore we can give a full solution. We seek to take robots to new applications, to use them for new applications and do things that robots were not able to do before. Especially my expertise is in a walking robots that are able to walk on rough terrain, like walking on 4 legs, on 6 legs, on 2 legs, like humans. So we have various works on this, how to maintain stability, not to fall, and to be able to advance themselves. The other field of my expertise is in grasping, robotic grasping, how robots can grasp different objects with different geometry, different mechanical properties, like stiffness, like roughness, like friction, something like that, and to design different grippers for robots to be able to pick different objects. And these are the main expertise. On top of this, we are using the tools that we have to take robots into different applications. So we develop robots for inspection, a hyper-redundant, like a snake-like robot for inspection of airplane wings, to get into the wing and inspect them from the inside, not during flight, but on the ground. But it has to be inspected, and we're working on this with the Israel aerospace industry, and also for the same kind of robot for plugging the electric car to the outlet, how to bring it automatically to charge the car.
So that people would not forget to charge their car, would not as an added
would not bother to
do not yes. bother, exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
It will be done automatically. And something like that. And from walking, I got into human walking, which is very interesting. And I have a long term for several years a collaboration with Professor Itzik Meltzer from the physical therapy department. and we are working on training devices to train the people to prevent falls, to have better balance and prevent falls, especially for the elderly, but also it applies to the whole population. So yeah.
So how many students do you have working with you in the lab?
Currently about 60 students, about 30 students for graduate level students, second degree and PhD level, and about 30 students in undergraduate level.
So when you say that you're specializing in robots that work in rough terrain, so right now I guess in industry, for example, we see a lot of robots in warehouses on wheels. They're not they're not walking. So you're bringing this expertise to the next level, so they are able to climb mountains, to go over rocks. Is that what you're doing?
Yes, for search and rescue, and for other applications that you don't have something that is structured environment. Even in big infrastructures like plants, big plants, or something like that, mines, you have to walk on very rough terrain, or climb stairs, ladders. Right. Yeah. So therefore, an articulated robot with limbs can walk on such environment.
And in your estimation, we are how many years away from that kind of robot that will be able to climb stairs, to take an object from a shelf, put it in a box, wrap it, call Amazon and ship it?
Okay, let's divide the question into two parts.
Sure.
For walking, we already have.
Okay. Okay.
For certain amount, we've seen Boston Dynamics, we've seen others, robots, dog-like robots, four-legged robots. We've seen them, they are still here. They're still not very capable. They can do some things, they can climb stairs, but not all rough terrain. They are not like real dogs. They can walk on rough terrain, but not very rough terrain, several objects or roughness of the terrain. They won't work on this. So it's already here, but we are working on improving the capabilities.
Okay.
And the other thing, the other part of your question was about taking an object from a warehouse and shipping it. So we are working now on application for picking and packing of objects. Yeah. We just established a new company for automating the picking and packing of objects in warehouses. So this is something that we work on. We have different technologies for grasping objects, for picking the objects. We have patents on that. And we have computer vision software to detect the objects and to decide how to pick them and where to pick them.
So being part of the Startup Nation, you are also part of and involved in 3 different companies. Am I correct? Robotics, and I think you referred to Pick Commerce that you're involved with, and Cleave Align that are startups. Please tell us a little bit about these 3, your involvement, what they do, and what's the future for these companies.
Yes, so Robotics is a private company that was established by a graduate of my lab, and I'm serving as the chief scientist of Robotics, and they are doing mainly drones for especially military applications. And that's, I think, all that I can say on YouTube.
So drones are considered in the family of robots?
Yes, they can sense the environment, they have cameras, they look, and then they can decide what to do with this information. So yes, they can navigate autonomously.
Okay.
So yes, they are kind of a robot.
Okay.
Picommerce is a company for automating the picking and packing tasks in warehouses. So this is a company that we just established, and we are working very hard to make it to make the first product that will be able to pick items from a bin and pack them in a shipping box. And Cleverline is completely different thing. It's a company, it's a startup company that uses AI and machine learning to help orthodontists. It's actually plan the motion of the teeth. You scan the teeth, and the doctor scan the teeth, and then our software helps to plan the motion of the teeth and how the teeth should move. And then using 3D printer, we print aligner that transparent aligners that a person can wear, and it will move the teeth actually to their desired location.
And where is the robotics part of that? That's not a robot.
It's kind of, because there's no physical robot there, but there is a software. There is a motion planning, which is what I do all the time for robots. But
right.
Here we are doing motion planning for teeth.
Okay.
And it's very interesting how a tooth can move in actually 6 dimensions. It can also rotate and move in space in the mouth.
Wow.
And finally, the application itself, the physical application, is using 3D printer. So we print the aligner itself according to the plan. So it's kind of robot, but it doesn't look like a robot.
Right. So for the past 2 years, we're in a world pandemic. We are also I'm not sure if it's yet to be known if it's as a result of the pandemic, but we're also in a world labor shortage. It seems that it's whether in Canada, in the United States, and I just saw an interview recently where the head of research at LinkedIn is saying that because of the pandemic, a lot of workers have decided not to go back to their jobs and looking for work where they are more satisfied, happier, which is an interesting concept. And that, where do you see robotics in menial labor? You're talking about picking. Do you see robots being able to pick in agriculture, for example, picking fruit, picking strawberries, blueberries? We have in Canada, we depend a lot on foreign workers in agriculture, especially in picking fruit. And with the pandemic, they haven't been able to come to Canada. Where does the robot in agriculture, for example, and I know that you have a high school background in agricultural engineering.
Yes, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so there are many works on picking robots for agriculture, for apple picking, strawberry picking, and I don't know about berry. Other, we tried last year a project on I think it was blueberry.
Yeah.
Yes, picking. Yes, there are some efforts on this, and we are we try to do our best. And it's kind of difficult because those workers, although there are shortage in human labor, but also the cheapest labor.
Right.
And robots are still very expensive.
Right.
And so the economics is not very ready for that, but it is changing.
So at the beginning of the pandemic, we had a webinar with you and a colleague from Robotics, and
Yes.
where you had sent a robot into I think it was a senior's residence with a screen that was able to be a kind of therapeutic element where patients were able to speak to loved ones on an iPad mounted on a robot, if I remember
Exactly.
correctly.
Yes.
Please, what is the role of robotics in healthcare? Maybe since the pandemic, and what have you seen the future of robotics in healthcare?
So there is a lot of advancement in remote healthcare.
Yes.
We are now speaking to doctors over the phone.
Yes.
And
over
not necessarily,
Zoom?
yeah, on Zoom, on over the phone, yeah.
Sure.
In robotics are not there, not very much. Again, they are very expensive, and it's very difficult for hospitals and for nurses to take care of a robot. Actually,
Right.
To operate a robot in addition to their daily work, it was not very accepted in hospitals. And that's what we've seen. And also their price is very high. So I don't know how it is in Canada, but in Israel, in the COVID departments, sections in the hospitals, they just mounted cameras and microphones all over, and that's it. And they were able to communicate from remote. And the robots were left in the nurse station to play YouTube.
Right.
Music.
Well, I don't. In Canada, like Israel, we have a government subsidized healthcare system, and the cost factors are always an issue. And
Yes.
I think that there's been reports of nurses going with their own iPads for patients to be able to see, and some very terrible stories of people dying in the hospital and being able to say goodbye because the nurse was nice enough to bring her own equipment to the patient. But that's another issue. One last question, Amir, and your impressions. You know, in like every other innovation in scientific research, there are incredible things that could come out of it. And in robotics, when you say that it's a thinking machine, what should we be afraid of? What is the worst case scenario? Could these machines take over one day?
I can't say no, because robots can do some things better than us. They can look at objects, they can identify things from much far distance, much better than us. And they can lift heavy objects that we can't, and etc. If you say about the threat, I think that the threat that I can see is in autonomous cars that will be here very soon, and autonomous drones, especially for drone deliveries, that will be here also very soon in the next few years. Tests in autonomous car and tests in delivered drones are already done, also here in Israel, but also in the world. And I think that the biggest threat is that something will malfunction, or the bad guys will take over and will cause accidents, or drones will fall off the sky on top of something or someone. And this from my perspective is the biggest threat in robots. Also, there are military robots, and there will be more and more military robots, and they are a threat.
Right. Great. So I'm sure that you're working with your colleagues in cybersecurity to make sure that the drones and robots don't fall into the wrong hands or not manipulated. Great. Amir, it's thank you very much for this. And again, look forward to having you in Canada with your robots, with a nice little demonstration, and continue your great work. Galit?
Thank you.
Amir and Simon, thank you both for a really fascinating chat. To our viewers, we hope you enjoyed our coffee date today. If you would like to learn more about the work and research that's being conducted at BGU, please be sure to visit our website. We are at www.bengurion.ca. And while you're on the website, you will be prompted to sign up for our newsletter, so please feel free to do that. You can also follow us on social media. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Coffee with Our Researchers. Bye for now.